Hey everyone, welcome to the Nolan Rossi podcast. I'm really glad that you're here. Today I've got a conversation for you with Jenn Parma. Jenn is a breathwork facilitator, and I have been curious about breathwork for a number of years. And I've been experimenting with different ways to use the breath to calm anxiety and to reduce stress. But when I experienced a group session that Jenn did about a year ago, the experience was way more than calming down my nervous system or reducing some stress. It was a profound and healing experience. Now, Jenn's own healing journey started with yoga and then breathwork and then into plant medicine. Now, Jenn is dedicated in her work to supporting people both in the preparation and the integration phases of plant medicine experiences and ketamine treatments. And she takes her own unique approach to breathwork, what she calls breath as medicine, in both group and personal settings. I was able to experience a 2-hour breathwork session with her, and it was really a profound experience that hit on a deeper level that I really had a hard time to actually put into words. And even though this is a deep conversation about healing in some very specific areas, we had a really fun time in our conversation. So I'm really excited for you to check it out. Here it is. So maybe I can just start by saying what I just experienced was incredible. Also, what is the word? Ineffable, like when you don't have language for it. So we're talking about breathwork today. And for someone that has never really, like they've heard the term, but they really don't know what is involved with a breathwork facilitator like yourself, how do you explain it to them?
I would say, well, there's so many different styles of breathwork, so it depends on if I'm answering the question just in a general way, because that's where I would start, is just kind of figuring out if nobody's had any experience with breathwork or if they've had some experience, because many people have experienced, have been to yoga and they've learned pranayama breathwork, or they've learned ujjayi breathwork, which is where I started. And then there's, certain people that are using breathwork for anxiety, and they're finding more of like a box breathing that's going to help them relax their nervous system and help them relax that anxiety. And then there's, the breathwork that I'm teaching is more of an activated breath. And so what I would tell people is it's interesting because it's hard, like what you just went through, and the words that I use are powerful and transformative. And that is but it just kind of doesn't totally encompass what it is. But I do try to prepare people because it's a huge experience and it opens up a lot. So I do feel like when people are curious about it, there is some even preparation going into it to just let people know that it's going to, there's this breath can unlock and unblock stuck emotions, so it can start to bring up things that maybe you didn't know were in there. And I think it is really important to know that can happen. Because some people are just not ready to unlock those things, and I've brought people into breathwork that weren't really ready for that, and that's where I've learned that I don't want to push people into it, and you really have to be ready for it and be wanting it. Same thing with plant medicine. There's no pushing people to do plant medicine. It's like if they feel a calling towards it, then I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. So what sort of people do come to you then if some people aren't ready? Like where is there a pattern that you see of the type of people that reach out to you for the first time, that they're going through this or that they're seeking a particular experience?
Yeah, there's a variety. There's either people that are already on kind of a transformational path. Maybe they're thinking about doing plant medicine, or they've done plant medicine. They're looking for something to help them prepare for that, or something to help them integrate that. I have many people that come to me really that are having anxiety attacks, and really trying to figure out ways in which to manage that. So I'm getting a lot of people from therapists, and I work with therapists as well. So it's even people that like some of my clients, many of my clients actually are therapists.
So they're actually licensed therapists are coming to you.
Yes, exactly.
To be able to go through a breathwork session.
Because they've done so much training and so much more of the talk therapy. And then, to be introduced into another tool that it accesses something very different than they've been able to go into. And then that's been really cool because, then I get to work with their clients. And so then there's a relationship there. And because I think that there's so much benefit in talk therapy, but, this just this gets to the somatic. This gets into what we're holding in our body, which we can't really talk. We're not going to talk about that. We need to just go into it and feel it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, some experience, some problems or experiences in life when we're struggling, we can't think our way out of or intellectualize our way through, for sure.
Yeah. And, and then what you've experienced with us with Grieve and Breathe, that's another thing that I'm working with. A lot of people that are in grief, because this breath work is so good at being able to access the grief that we're holding and and the layers, whatever that is, whether there's anger there's shame, there's guilt, there's sadness, there's, all the things, it's able to get in there and just start to move some of that energy. So, those are some of the more common places. And then there's just the people that are curious. I've heard about breath work, and I get a lot of that, more of that in the group classes, when I'm teaching at yoga studios or some of these bigger event centers. I teach at festivals, so festivals are fun because, people there are way more open to just going into an experience. And yeah, I think it's great to be curious. I do really try to prep people, that this is a big experience. So, just so that they're ready to at least go into it.
Okay, so why don't we back up one step, and can you tell me about how you began your journey to be a breathwork facilitator? What was that story?
So I guess I'll take it back to my big awakening moments started with yoga. So I was in fitness for my whole 20s. So 20 to 30, I was in the fitness industry, and I was just very, very disconnected from my body. Struggled with eating disorders from the time I was 13 until I was 30. And really what started to heal that was quitting what I was doing, not knowing what I was going to do. I ended up randomly at this place called Mount Madonna Center, which is a spiritual community, and they teach yoga, pranayama, which is breath work, and meditation. And I just dove into that community and studied with them. And it was the first time that I started to feel my feelings. I mean, I don't remember feeling my feelings when I was little, and I don't remember feeling them really. I remember feeling depressed and then shoving it down with, the eating disorder or alcohol I got into or drugs I got into. And so first was yoga, and yoga was so healing for me. It was life-changing. And I do think that the breath work that came with yoga, the pranayama and the ujjayi breath, and just more of breathing deeply in connection to movement, the asanas, it was the first time in my life that I was able to stop being bulimic, and it was a miracle. Oh. And so I dove deep into yoga and studied yoga, and I did yoga teacher training after yoga teacher training after yoga teacher training, and I just couldn't stop because I was benefiting so much for myself. And after teaching yoga for some time, I just started going deep into the pathway of self-discovery and healing, and then started kind of plant medicine. And I ended up at an ayahuasca retreat center in Costa Rica, and they use breath work in the beginning. So they'll do breath work the first night, and then they do 4 nights of ayahuasca, and then they do 2 more breath work sessions. And the breath work was so transformative, and the breath work for many people was their biggest experience out of that whole retreat. And I just wanted to know more about that. So then I started studying that breath work, a more activated breath work practice. And that was maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. So I just dove into breath work. And I've been teaching it ever since.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Can you back up to, was it Pirani? I'm not familiar with the yoga breath work that you referenced and their names.
Pranayama.
Pranayama.
Yeah.
Could you give a little primer to like any audience members that's not familiar with either of those like I am?
Yeah. So most people know yoga as like asana. Yoga as in the movements that we do, right? Downward facing dog.
Yep.
Tadasana, we all know that. And
the routine of moving from different positions.
Moving from different positions. And that's, so in yoga, that's just one limb. They call it the 8 limbs of yoga. Okay. And so asana is the movement practice. But then there's pranayama, which is breathing. And there's a lot of different pranayama breathing practices. And one that most people maybe are familiar with, especially those that attend an asana practice or go to a yoga studio, would be Ujjayi breath, which is a breath that you're breathing in and out through your nose. You're creating a restriction in the back of your throat, and it's like an ocean-like sound. So,
can you give us an example? I'm so curious because I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah. So it'd be like. And that breath with the restriction in the back of your throat, it helps you to sip the breath in slower and more controlled. And there's also a presence that you have to have when you're breathing Ujjayi breath. So that breath in particular with a yoga movement, so especially if you're doing like a vinyasa practice, and vinyasa is breath with movement. And so it's a faster practice because you're going from one pose to the next pose, but you're using this breath that we're doing. So, you went into a cat-cow pose before we did breath work, and the cat-cow movement, so just imagine that you're moving with your breath. So you'd be like an inhale and an exhale.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just breath with movement. And so that was the first real breath that I connected with. And I think that it was the first breath that connected me to my body. And then, and then starting to connect to my body for the first time, really going in, and then it's like all the emotions that I've shoved down for 20 plus years started to move. And it really took a lot of, to just allow that to start coming out of me was uncomfortable at first because it was confusing. All of a sudden I'm crying and it's like, where is this coming from? And it just got to be the point where I would go to the yoga practices or I'd do things and there would be a period of time where I'd just like cry, and it didn't need to be about anything. It was just this release. And so back then, I didn't know that much. Now that I've been down this road for some time, and with breath work, it even unlocks more. And so it's such a practice for me, and it's it's something that I teach a lot, a practice to just allow emotion to move through us without needing a story, without needing to control it, or, it's like, it's such a practice and it's such a gift when we can just let that emotion come and move. It's almost like when the if you can get into that really big cry where it just starts to come out of you, it's such a relief. It's not like, people are so afraid of that, and I've been one of those too. But it's like now when I cry, I'm like, I'm just so grateful because it's just like I know that it's a release. It's like that's one of the best ways that we can release energy.
Yeah. Yeah, most of us were raised in cultures, the dominant culture, I think, in the U.S. even is about controlling your feelings, and even spaces and rituals like funerals and wakes. It's not expected. The permission to release big emotions might be allowed for a select small few of those individuals that are showing up to that. space. It is not a collective ritual of grief in that manner.
No. And I think that, definitely in our culture, we don't, well, none of us know, we're not even shown, because it's like our parents don't grieve, they don't know how to grieve either, and so then it's like we just kind of grow up like not even knowing how to do that.
Right.
And I don't know that there's a right or wrong way, but allowing emotion to move is part of grief. I mean, that's, and our culture is just not doing that. I mean, I was listening to somebody and they called it emotionally constipated.
I was just thinking, I was just thinking digestively, the exact same thing. If you eat something and it doesn't sit well with you, and it's going to come out one way or the other. And
Right.
our emotions, we tend to think that we can just continue to just stuff down and stuff down and stuff down.
Yeah.
And even places like you said earlier, like conventional, therapy. It's like great. I mean, my therapist. I mean, it's been a lifeline. Like the tools and the concepts and like the space to share has been incredible. But it's not. It can't all stay up like in your mind. Like there's a body component of it that we have to recognize.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if you have anything to say about. We've been talking about culture and grief. Like, what is the existing culture with breath?
I don't know. I don't know what you're asking.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking about is the shallowness of our breath from a day-to-day standpoint. How so many things take our breath away, like we speak in those terms.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm thinking of someone coming to you to do breath work that they, like you said, like might not completely be ready. Is that because the person has had like a lifetime of really not thinking about their breath and connecting with their breath and actually allowing their actual body to inhale and exhale like fully? Because so much of our life is this tight breath of the stress and the anxiety of life, of things surprising us and our breath being taken away.
I think that there's many people that come to me that are holding so much, and they do know that they're not breathing. Like they're just like, I'm just not breathing. And there's some awareness there. And so I think there's some of that where people are holding so much that they are aware that they're not breathing. And then there's awareness that like, I feel like I really need to look at that. And then there's many of our culture that just doesn't even, that there's no awareness around it at all, right? And that's when we're very distracted, and when we're using everything. I mean, we have every tool at our, like our phones are attached to us. We've got, Netflix and chill. We've got all the things, and then there's just like everything else that we do to numb ourselves. And I think that's many people are not even connected to their body, to even body or breath, right? To even notice the pain that they're carrying, the stress that they're carrying in their body. And I think that's where many people are getting, it's if they're not going to move that energy, the emotion, the stuck energy, or they're having this really shallow breath, then they're putting their body into a fight or flight state all the time. And then that's going to show up in their body as some disease, like whether that's whatever it is, it's going to show up some way. It's going to manifest in their body. So one way or the other, they're going to have to, go through it.
Because you're literally, depriving your cells of the oxygen that it needs when you're existing in that state, right?
Yeah.
So like our stress and our anxiety is leading to this shallow breath, this way of being that literally isn't like nourishing our cells
right
in the way that they need.
Yeah.
So it's like a starvation of oxygen in a sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you, if someone, how do we even begin to like bring awareness to this to people that might acknowledge like, I'm breathing so shallow, but they're not ready to, but breath work seems a little woo-woo to them, or like they're just maybe intimidated by the full experience.
Yeah. I mean, my advice is just for people just start to pay attention to their breath. And I think that there's a lot of things now with, I think there's on your watches. I don't have one.
Yeah.
But I think that there's different tools out there that are more mainstream, that not so woo-woo,
Yeah.
if we want to use those words,
Sure.
but are just a reminder to breathe, and to ding that, or, maybe set a timer for yourself to just remind yourself to take a couple deep breaths, and that just means like take a deep breath and bring your breath into your belly and exhale, and it's just doing that and being consistent and just starting to bring just some of that simplicity into your day-to-day, where it's not going into some big practice, and maybe you can build upon that, if you're really starting to feel like I cannot take a deep breath, or I'm really stressed, I'm really anxious, and you want to do something about it, then take some deeper breaths. It's a really good place to start, is just to start taking deeper breaths throughout the day, and start as much as you can. Remind yourself to bring awareness. So when you're in conversations, or you're, you're driving and you're in traffic, are you holding your breath? Can you in that moment just notice, like, I'm stressed right now, or I'm frustrated? And then can that be that moment of, instead of holding, which is our natural way of being, or like more of what we would do if we're stressed, is to then go the opposite, is just take a deep breath and come back, and to start, there's this empowerment that comes in when we start to know that we can recognize when we're either really highly stressed, we're feeling anxious, we're not grounded, And so I think even just first knowing what that feels like within yourself, so that you can take a moment in that space and just take a few deep breaths. It doesn't need to be so woo-woo, and it doesn't need to be this big practice. But once you start taking a few deep breaths and you start connecting to your breath, you might then feel more inclined to, do something a little bit more. And, and there's many breathwork practices that aren't to the extreme of what you and I just did. And that's why I teach that first breath. I teach 3 different breaths that we do. And that's why I teach that first breath, because it's more approachable, it's gentler, and it's something that people can do if they really wanted to do something like for 3 to 5 minutes, just set a timer, and they wanted to just basically go into bringing their awareness to their breath. Number 1 is first just bringing your awareness. Our breath is the one thing in our body that we can control, or that we can forget about, and it will just do its thing. So it's a pretty cool tool that we have, that we can tune into, we can bring our awareness, and we can take some control of our breath. And we can just start to deepen our breathing, and start to create maybe a natural connected breath like we did, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be over the top. It can be for 1 minute. It can be for 5 minutes. So I think that that's more approachable and not so far out there.
As you were talking, I was thinking about how our bodies actually do know how to do this. It just often takes an extreme situation for us to notice that self-regulation. And my mind immediately went to my 5-year-old son, who, when he is having his biggest meltdowns, he's angry about something that's not going right. It is huge anger. And then when he has finally expressed all of that, he usually just takes like a huge inhale and exhale, and then he's ready to be like held and and to receive compassion, and to kind of give up like whatever problem he was trying to solve that wasn't working out, So it's like his body, all this anxiety and tension was building up in his body, and then finally, I often wonder like if that. It would be interesting to like research on the science on this, but I feel like oftentimes it's like his body has to get to the max that it can go, and then that breath is what allows his mind to actually like let go of the problem, or whatever isn't going his way. Because
Yeah.
in that moment, talking to him or like him thinking through it typically isn't the thing, at least at that stage of development for a young, developing mind. Like his body has to go to that red line, and then its body has this course correcting way of taking a huge breath, and then the release can happen.
Yeah. Such great teachers.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Kids are, yeah.
And like, I think that the other piece of that is that they actually have tantrums, and, it's like there's a big feeling coming up, and they, to see them go through a tantrum and release in that way, and then to be, able to take a deep breath and come back into their body and be like, ready for that nurturing. It's like, that's the difference, right? And as adults, of course, it's like we can't just go and have huge, some of us do, and that's like, big tantrums. But there has to be ways in which we can figure out how to, when we're feeling that kind of same feeling that a child's feeling, that same kind of anger or same deep sadness, or like, what are we doing with that? And most of us are just shoving it down. Mm-hmm. And shoving it down and shoving it down and shoving it down, and then it's just like that's the emotional constipation that I'm talking about. And I imagine just observing a child having a big tantrum and then just seeing them like coming out of it with a big deep breath. I just imagine like what a release. Like they let that emotion move through them. They're able to like then take a deep breath. Because if they held on to that, they're not going to be taking a deep breath. It's going to be a shallow, restricted breath, holding that deep emotion in. So, yeah.
You already started to reference your breath as medicine practice. Mm-hmm. So let's go through that, because you have your own way of presenting the breath, and it's through these 3 pathways. Mm-hmm. So can you walk me through it?
Yeah. So I chose breath as medicine in a heart medicine breath, a body medicine breath, and a spirit medicine breath. And there was different reasons which I chose that. One, I wanted to give people 3 different breaths to learn. And also it kind of goes from a little bit of a gentler breath to a more intense breath to the most intense breath. And so I also want to empower people in the experience that they are in control. So if it gets to be too intense as we take into the next step of a more intense breath, that they can go back to the first breath. And then I also, picked breath as medicine because, my journey with psychedelics and using psychedelics in my own healing journey, I've found over the years that breathwork can be just as powerful as plant medicine. And so I also wanted to pick, because there's different plant medicines out there that are for heart opening. And then there's different medicines that are going to be more body medicines that are going to help to really access what we're holding in the body. And then there's different medicines that are more of a spirit medicine, that are like more of those highly psychedelic medicines, or like a DMT. And so I wanted to kind of give people an experience of those 3 breaths, and also this connection as to you can access these places with your breath, very similar places with your breath. So that is kind of the journey with it, is they're all kind of like deep, expansive, full diaphragmatic breaths, which means that we're bringing breath into the belly and then up to the chest. And each breath is really an effort on the inhale and a relaxing on the exhale. So it's just kind of more of the layers of.
And could you detail a little bit more specifically what is the goal of each step? Like, where are you trying to take someone with each of the three breaths?
So the heart medicine breath is a breath for. It's also known as a heart coherence breath, and that's through the Heart Math Institute. They've been studying it. So there's a lot of science behind these breaths. I've gotten dabbled into a little bit of the science, but I'm more of a feeling person. I like the experience
if
of
it works,
and
it works. It's
it works,
Like,
right?
I'm glad the science people are taking care of that, but it's been working over here. I already know. Like, I'm glad y'all are figuring that out. But I already know that this works.
Yeah. So, the heart medicine breath is a space for us to come into a heart coherence. That means that we are in a space of well-being within ourselves. That means that our heart is open. And so that's also a place for us to really feel into what does that feel like when our heart is open? And so finding those memories or experiences where you feel like your heart has been open. And that can be, when you're with somebody that you love and you've had this moment with them, right? This connection where your heart is super open. I always think of my Nana. She's like, she's the first person I go to, just heart opened. And or just like thinking of places that you go on the earth that are your favorite places that bring you into that state of like peace, contentment. And so that breath is supposed to get you into those spaces. You're using also those memories, those feelings to bring you into that space with that connected breath. So that's the first breath, is really getting yourself into a heart open experience. And that's a really powerful breath, and it's easy to access that breath. And then the next breath is the body medicine breath. And so that's going to go more into the somatics, and it's a more intense breath done in and out through the mouth. And its intention is to really start to stir up a lot of the energy that's being stuck in our body. So it activates your energy body, it activates your physical body and your emotional body. And so whatever you're holding there, it's going to activate all of it. And that's so I wanted to do body medicine breath so that I can encourage people to stay in their body. And many of us, unconsciously, are really good at just going out of our body. And whether we're checking out, and that's why it's really helpful to have somebody holding space with you in this breath to help you stay in the breath, because otherwise it's really hard to stay breathing this way by yourself. And you want to kind of check out, you want to stop, and just feel like I'm tired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is work.
Yeah. There was a part of that. I felt that in the middle of it, that like there's just like a fatigue to it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like call it work, but like there's just like an intentionality, and it is stirring things up is such a great way of explaining it, because from a physical standpoint, there's like this circular energy feeling. I don't know, it's almost like, like when you hit your funny bone and you kind of get a tingly feeling. Like it's on par with that, but like a full body experience of that, where just everything feels activated.
Right. And it's all personal, because how you're feeling is not how somebody else is going to feel, because it's personal to what you're holding in your body. Mm-hmm. But that is one of the things, is that you can feel tingling, you can feel cramping, there's all kinds of sensations. But the cool thing is you're really you're feeling your energy body, right? You're feeling what is happening in a really intense way. So you're activating all of that. So the body medicine breath is really there to help release those somatic things that we're holding. Yeah. So that's where I encourage people, that's where the tears can come. That's where we use our voice. So there's a release of toning and moving the body. And so it's whatever's there, because not only do we shove down like anger and sadness, the hard things that we don't want to feel, but we also shove down joy. How many times, have you been in a situation where you hold back your joy? I do that. Yeah. I observe myself doing that a lot.
Yeah, there's kind of like an overall rule of any expression should not be too big, because it's going to encroach on other people's experience.
Yeah.
So whether it's joy, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, it all, too much is too much for people.
Right. You're being too much. Yeah. I definitely I definitely have that. And so there's a lot of holding back on my expressions. And I think it's for most of us. And so that's what's being brought up to the surface. So it doesn't necessarily need to be, all anger and frustration and sadness and pain, but it's the other emotions too, love and joy, and all of that can start to be pleasure. It's all can be kind of part of the experience. You never know what's going to come up. And so it's a really cool place to, what I always say is, be curious and, stay in curiosity around what you're feeling. And that way, if you're curious, you can usually stay more connected to your body and to the sensations rather than judging them or, because once we get into that, we're in our ego mind, and then that's where a lot of fear comes in, and the resistance and the judgment. And that's where we start to pull away from the whole experience, right? And that's where we start to check out, or we just don't want to do it. And so, I wanted to create a time for people to be in their body, because the other piece is that people that come to this breath work, the other people that come to this breath work are people that really love accessing higher states of consciousness. And so that is more, and it's, breath work is promoted, some breath work's even called DMT breathing, right? And so it's more of where that natural DMT in our brain, and there's other chemicals that are probably being released. I mean, I don't think the science is totally accurate with what's happening, but people come to breath work because they want to access those higher states of consciousness, and that's available, and it's an amazing thing to be able to journey with. And the things I've witnessed people, go through and see and happen in these spaces is incredible. And that's why I believe in it so much. But I wanted to leave. That's why I left the spirit medicine breath, so that people, there is a space for people to stay in their bodies and work through the somatics and work in this physical form. And there is an opportunity to go more into that spirit medicine breath, where it's a more activated breath, and there's breath retentions that are, really bringing us into that possibility of accessing those higher states of consciousness. So it's kind of all of that, right? It's heart opening, it's working through the body, the somatics, and then it's being able to open up to higher states of consciousness, whatever that means for you.
I'm not aware that has been the pursuit for some people through breath work, but I have had friends that have been on a retreat or have done a day with breath work, and they've referred to it as psychedelic or like an out-of-body sort of experience.
Right.
And they don't have, other than that, they're like, I don't know how to explain it. I was just like someplace else. And it was amazing.
Yeah. And that's how many people describe it. It's very similar to psychedelics. And I think that I gently present that in that way because, psychedelics aren't for everybody. And, and that's why this is a great way to, have some type of mirroring of that experience, whether you are being called to psychedelics or you're not. But people that are going down that pathway of psychedelics and, they enjoy that kind of, they've gotten a lot of benefit out of that kind of healing or whatever it is, this breath is something that they might want to dive into, because then they realize, wow, I can access that with my breath. It's just, I've had multiple people tell me time and time again that they're having bigger experiences than they've had with even ayahuasca or psilocybin with breath work.
Wow.
And so, I just, after teaching this for so long and hearing it from so many people, it's like, I know it, and I've experienced it myself, it's like,
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's worth saying now, since we've already been talking about plant medicine, that we're not endorsing it. We're not saying that it is for everyone. Obviously, these are a lot of these are controlled substances that the legality even is questionable depending on where you live.
Right.
That being said, there are long traditions of people using these substances and these plants for healing, for rituals that have a lot of meaning, have brought a lot of healing to people. I just wanted to like say that on
Yeah,
the
no, I
forefront,
think-
obviously, because
I think that's important.
because it's more in the zeitgeist than ever. Plant medicine. I mean, I remember when I read Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind.
Yeah.
I've always loved all his work from Omnivore's Dilemma on, and I was intrigued the whole time. And then something about he had a picture. Can't remember what study it was, if it was MIT or who did it, but someone did a brain scan while someone was on psilocybin, and they just like they were talking about it, and then they created an illustration about just like the left-right brain connection, or all the interconnections in the brain, just like how much interwoven they were during that process. And then I think in the book too, they talked about how they've seen similar situations in like monks and people in meditative practices. And so like all of it just started connecting all these dots between the science and the spirituality for me, that I was just like, whoa, this is undeniable, that this is doing something. This is bringing health and integration and healing to people. And so obviously his book, I don't know, I forget how long his book came out, 7 or 8 years ago at this point. But I remember from that standpoint on, it just changed how I thought about all those things. But your work, you are really dedicated about supporting people in the integration, in the preparation and in the integration for that. And where, like, how did that, I guess, like passion or that, like that desire come from? Did you see a lack in experiences there from your own experience?
Yeah, I saw a lack. I mean, a part of it is it's kind of harm reduction, right? Because psychedelics, plant medicines, whatever you want to call it, ethnogens, it's like there's all these words now. It's popular. It's becoming really well known, and a lot of people are diving into it. And like a lot of people are going into the Amazon and sitting with big medicine with these tribes, and it's like it's a different culture, right? They grow up in that. So, to go and experience, if you go say to do ayahuasca in the Amazon with a shaman, it's a huge experience, and they're not integrating people there because they don't need integration. It's like, it's part of their culture. It's part of it's been part of what they are raised in. And so, for us to go from the Western world over there and to do such a big experience, and then we come back here, it can actually really throw people off. And so that's one reason, is I've seen that time and time again. And I've also seen, and then I've seen a lot of people that are just, they become like chasing after the medicine. So they're just constantly, it's just like one ceremony after the next ceremony after the next ceremony. And they're not really integrating those experiences. They're not creating lasting change in their life. See people that are doing a lot of medicine, and it's like I've noticed that they're not actually, it's not improving their life. And so, there is, for me, and then my own experience with it is that it's the same, it's similar with breath, but it's different. Like those are really big experiences. So I think that it's important, like preparation, to even know what you're going into, because many people it's just a curiosity, or they're desperate, like they're desperate for help, and it's kind of, I'll do anything,
Yeah, they're reaching for that, what that molecule does, in the same way that they would just reach for an antidepressant or something else.
Right.
Like they're really in a desperate like space where they're looking for anything.
Yeah. And so I just, I found it to be something that's needed. And it kind of was just like another thing that came in. I met some people that had went through a program for psychedelic integration coaching, and it just felt in alignment for me. I felt like I want to learn that. And so, I've dove into that, and it's been, with ketamine's now legalized. And so there's, I'm supporting ketamine clinics by coaching people, prepping them for their sessions and integrating. And so many of the ketamine clinics are also hiring coaches to come on and to help people in that preparation integration process. And I think it's really important because not all of them have that, but I do think it's an important piece.
Yeah. Can you walk me through that? Like, so if you're working with a ketamine clinic, a legal ketamine clinic, and you're helping coach on the front end, on the intro or preparation phase and the integration. What is that process like? How much time are you spending with them, and what are you doing in those spaces?
I mean, most of the clinics have something where it's just like an hour prep. So you're just really getting to know what brought the client to the session, and then also just kind of prepping them for what the experience might be like and how they can, what they need to prepare for. It's kind of a generalized 1 hour session that's really just getting them set up, answering any of their questions, connecting them to also expectations. And many people that are going into ketamine treatment have multiple sessions that they're doing over a period of time. And so then we're coming, like after each experience, we'll have a session with them to help them integrate, to help them kind of go through what came up for them. And then just, it's just all kind of working with them as just to see, what came up, if they have questions, maybe just helping them to like look at things a little differently, or and I think that that's just one part of it. And then it's like really the integration should last a little longer, and it does. So then some people will stay on with a coach because, anything like this, ketamine is just one example of a plant medicine or a tool that's going to, it's helpful, but it's not going to fix the problem forever, right? So it's not getting down to the very roots of the issue. And so, that's kind of where the coaching comes in, or some of the more longer term, like going into where is the root cause of whatever they're, coming with their challenge, to start to work through that. And and that's why we start to integrate things. Like, what are you doing for your practices? What are your tools? How is, starting to go through like lifestyle things and patterns that they have, ways in which they're operating. So it's kind of going deeper into that stuff if people are wanting to really go that route. But I think it's an important part of going into these plant medicines is if, you see something that, they'll point out certain things for you, but then what are you doing with that information? Yeah,
I think that that's a important part of the equation that I don't hear talked enough about. I'm not in the space like you are, but I've followed MAPS and Poland's work and some of the other like key figures. And I remember a question or an idea was posed. There's been a lot of, if you trace the history of the government and psychedelics, when it's been allowed and when it hasn't, it's obviously been a push pull. And when it comes to like talking about big pharma or like these pharmaceutical companies, of course, they don't want to sell a pill or a drug that only has a one-time use, essentially, that does what a lifetime a prescription costs.
Yeah.
There's just no financial benefit of that,
right.
But people have transformative experiences like that, where it really does change them or cures them of things. Like there's lifetime really shifts that happen with these medicines. I mean, that's a little. But I guess to reinforce what you were saying before, that's not like the whole story. It's not like a magic pill and then like you're good. Like there
is some people that it's like a one and done, right? They come in and they have this huge transformational experience, and it does change them. It changes the trajectory of their life forever. I mean, and that is happening, but it's not like. It's not a magic pill that's going to fix everything, right? But there's so much benefit to utilizing these things. I mean, it's, and I love that they're doing so much study and they're studying with people that are like really, PTSD, like a lot of veterans.
Right.
And it's really helping,
Yeah.
and that's amazing. And to have that, but I do think if you can do it along with coaching and have have somebody helping you with the preparation, have somebody helping you with the integration process, then it really adds to really what you're doing. I mean, I feel like makes it, I don't know, a longer, extended, life-changing experience.
Yeah, it's a full. Well, and it's bringing that awareness piece into what is going on, and maybe what are some things to look at.
Yeah, just unpacking it, because there is a lot to unpack in a plant medicine journey, and it's helpful to have somebody like working with you in that. Rather than just going and doing it. Because what's happening is people are going to these huge processes and then they come back and they just go right back into life.
Into their life, yeah.
Right back in.
Yeah.
And they don't take the time needed to unpack what just happened. And a lot of times it stirs up all kinds of things and it's confusing. So if you've got somebody that's experienced and also that can, help you with that and help you kind of look at things, it makes it like way more impactful. And, and it's just, that's the difference of people going, to these other, cultures and doing this and coming back, because we have a very busy lifestyle. We're just, and people come back and, if you open up all this stuff, it can really be a lonely journey, because then you might be different than you come back and you've changed in some ways. And then you come back and you're in the same relationships, you're in the same 8-to-5 job, and it starts to be
you've changed, but the world around you hasn't
and
changed.
And then you don't have anyone to talk to, because the people around you aren't on, like, they haven't experienced this before, they're not looking at it this way. And and so that's a lot of the people that come to me is maybe they just don't have the community. I think the community is really important when you're going to decide to do something like this, is to have some people around you that you can relate to. Otherwise it's just, it will be a lonely experience.
And so this is the sort of support that you offer, that you give to people. I actually, what came to mind is, I'm just thinking of anyone who's listening to this who maybe isn't as familiar, as I was thinking about your example there of someone coming back into their normal life and everything is the same. On the one hand, conversations and people's understanding on psychedelics and plant medicine is more prevalent than ever before. On the other hand, there's still communities and cities and most places where it's really stigmatized.
Right.
And I'm thinking of those people right now in the context of this conversation. And my place that I point them to is just to look at MAPS Society and to see, like, are they into 5 years of work with PTSD and MDMA?
I think it's actually been longer, but I don't know.
They've been doing clinical trials.
Yeah, they've been doing it.
They're in the long haul of trying to get specifically MDMA, correct?
MDMA and psilocybin. I think they're both pretty close.
Yeah, but if you look into them, like anyone I think that is maybe critical or is like that has any sort of side eye toward this whole subject, if you look at them and you see how thorough and rigorous they are with their methodology, I think it puts a lot of those naysayers to rest. I know I came to it all very open-minded, but when I saw how detailed and just how well done, like, their studies are, like, you can go online and you can see the sort of work they do, how they set up their trials, the therapists that they are working alongside with. It is a very, like, holistic approach to solving this problem.
Yeah, and I think, like, Michael Pollan opened up so many people, and and I think that's a lot. He makes it way more approachable, I think, for people, because I don't know, he's great.
Well, he cracked, in the sense, like, he did that with, like, the food industry.
Right.
Like, he has, like, such a Michael Pollan, to me, is so approachable because of his curiosity, and he doesn't really come to things with a presupposition. So like even as you're reading like his second book on like food and like the food system, you kind of already know that he's seen it all and he's got his views on it, but he's still coming in very gently about it and not, beating you over the head with like the right and the wrong way to do
Exactly.
things.
Yeah.
And I think that around a conversation around breath work and breath as medicine and plant work, like the same approach is really helpful to bring people in and to not just overpower them with a particular way or a right or wrong
exactly.
way.
Yeah. And that's exactly where I'm at. It's like I don't feel like breath work is for everybody. I don't feel like plant medicine is for everybody, but I do think it's really important, and I think that this is, more than anything, I just really like to help empower people to know that there is specific tools and practices that are going to support them in, self-discovery, getting back to center. And I think the main thing is just being able to navigate and regulate our nervous system. And so there's so many different tools out there. And I think that for me, it's just empowering people to find what works for them. And, what's going to work in one moment isn't always going to work in the next moment. So you've got to kind of have a tool belt of things to choose from. Maybe it's just going for a walk out in nature, or going for a beach walk, taking your shoes off so you can get on the earth. There's so many things and there's so many pathways. This is like, breath work, plant medicine. They're just like one tool. And for me, breath work has just been a really, really powerful tool to use in my life. And I notice when I kind of go, because I'm not constantly on practices either. It's just like certain times of my life, something will happen. Like last week, I had my psoas like spasm so intensely. I mean, it literally took me down, paralyzed me I couldn't even move. And it was just like such a reminder. I was carrying so much stress in my body, so much fear in my body. And so now I'm on this like commitment, I'm doing my breath work every morning, every night, 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night. And I'm going to do it for 10 weeks because I just like, I recognize I need that right now. I'm like, there's certain times that I'm really more connected to a gentler practice or, like meditation works. And sometimes I know I have to go into a really big, intense breath work like we just did because I've got a whole bunch of energy that needs to move, and like exercise and moving my body. And so it's like you have to know what tools work for you and when they're going to work, because there's many times I'll sit down on a meditation and, if I'm in a really big traumatic situation, I try to meditate, that's not going to work. It's the last thing I need right now is to sit here and try to like calm. I need to do something that's going to move the energy, and then maybe I can sit and be quiet and calm my mind.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you offer breath work in several different avenues. I mean, like you teach group classes, you do individual sessions. Like, can you give us a little bit more of an example of like the different ways that you offer breath work?
Yeah. So I do group classes. I'm teaching them all over, really, but right now I'm in Santa Barbara. So I'm teaching in Santa Barbara and in Ojai, just kind of in that area. And then I do private, so in-person breath work if people are here locally and want to do it. But I also do a lot of Zoom breath work. And, for most of that I was very resistant. And I started doing that during COVID. And I was amazed, and I have been amazed at how powerful it is over Zoom. So I have quite a bit of clients. I actually work more people with Zoom than in person. And I'm just starting because I'm settling back into Santa Barbara and I've got a space. So now I can, do more in person. But yeah, I work a lot with people over Zoom, and I do group Zoom sessions as well. And then I've got people that like partner up. So it'd be like, husband and wife do it. I've got best friends that are, splitting Zoom sessions. And so, yeah, it's been awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such an interesting and great way to like connect with people. Do you find that people are more comfortable to be in their own space to do this?
I think it's a mix, I think some people are resistant to it. They want to have somebody with them hands-on. And then some people are more comfortable. And, if you're going to do a breathwork session over Zoom, you have to have a comfortable space. So there is a limitation, because if you don't have a space that you can be loud and feel like you can release, and so most people have set themselves up. Most people will do it in bed, is probably the most comfortable, or if there's like an office space and they've got like a comfortable thing they can lay on. So yeah, I've had people do it in their closet. So,
Anything can work.
there is something to that. If you feel like there's a space that you're comfortable in your home, that you can really let go. I know for me that, I've had some of my bigger breathwork experiences at home. And I've done online breathwork. I take other people's stuff too. And I've had some pretty big experiences at home. I think that there's, me personally, I have that resistance of like, there's maybe something that won't release if somebody's holding space for me, or if I'm in a group situation. So sometimes when I'm just by myself, I can really let go, have those massive releases. So
Different tools for different situations.
Yeah.
And yeah. Sometimes you need to go away to do the retreat and be out of your day to day.
Yeah.
And other times you need to do it right where you are and be in your space.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So how do people find out more about what you're doing and follow you? And if they want to work with you, how do they get in touch?
So my business is called Integratness, and it's integrate, Integrate. Is how you spell integrate. How you spell integrate -ness.com. So you can find my website there, and then you can contact me there. Or if you're on Instagram, I'm Jenn, JENN.Parma, PARMA. So that's probably the best ways to contact me.
That's great.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you feel like a story or something that you want to leave people with around the work that you do and like why you do this?
I mean, why I continue doing this is because I just continue to see how effective it is. And it's a service for me, to hold space for people. And I don't come from a place of I am a healer or, I'm doing something for people. It's just, I feel like I really gain so much from being able to hold space for people to do that work for themselves. And, and then I can help to provide some tools that I've learned, that have helped me, and then see how that feels for them. And so, it's been a journey for me working with people in this capacity for many, many years. And I believe so deeply in the work that I'm doing and just in these practices and these tools. And I have such a knowing that, we are our own healers. We are our own guru. We have everything we need inside of us. So, there's that space that I really want to hold for people. That's why, I chose the name for my business as Integratness, because I really want to help people find and integrate practices and tools and different parts of themselves that maybe haven't been integrated or felt, so that they can move into their greatest purpose and, their greatest self. And so that's really why I do it, and just, and I'm like, choosing to use these tools as my own medicine, so it's like the only reason I'm doing it is because I need it the most.
Yeah.
It's like it keeps me in the practice. If I'm, I feel like I really want to walk the walk that I'm, talking about. And so it's important for me, and it's helped me to stay on the path of my own my own process, my own self-discovery, my own healing. Like we were talking about that, there's something in me that wants to deeply know myself. There's something in me that is curious and wants to know like what's happening in there and what's blocking me. And so, I don't think that I think it's going to be a lifelong journey,
Sure.
and that's kind of the people that I want to work with that are willing to, to know that that is what they're committing to is a lifelong journey. This isn't just like a one and done. They're not going to come to me and it's like everything's done. It's just more of like, yeah, let's empower you to find these tools and practices, and also and practices is so important because we have to practice these things over and over. When I build in breath work into my daily practice and I, do it every day for, like I'm doing right now, 10 weeks, then I'm more in touch with my breath all throughout the day. When you say that, like when we were talking about people not really noticing when they're holding their breath, it's like if they build a breathwork practice and there's commitment and consistency for a period of time, then it's just going to start to naturally happen, right? It's like it's same thing with yoga. It's like, I mean, I think you do yoga, but it's like after a while, after you do yoga, it's like you're just starting to integrate that into your life. Like I find myself just randomly doing like a forward fold or, you start to bring those practices into your life. And it's not something that you have to think about. It's something that you just intuitively have built into your life. You've integrated it in and it's become part of your lifestyle. And so that's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
For myself and for other people, because I know it works.
Yeah. It worked for me. And so I want to give this gift and tell you about it and invite you into it. And that's the best place to be, I think, for anyone. So yeah. Thanks, Jenn.
Thank you.
You're the real deal. Like everything that you said about, I want to encourage you because everything that you said about that, this, the space that you work in, I'm not as familiar with, but if you follow Instagram or you start looking on websites, there are a lot of people that are presenting themselves as the guru, as like, this is the way, follow me. And you're not that. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about you because you do offer these tools and are empowering people to really take a new sort of agency in their lives and their wellness. Because that's really what this is about. As you were talking about like yoga earlier, like I've just restarted another like just trying to work out 6 days a week just to get stronger.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm 2 weeks in from just being this dedicated and I haven't been in that while. And I'm like, I can pick my kid up better. Like this just feels better to be Nolan Rossi as a dad and in my life. Like I can take the groceries like in better. Like this is just creating wellness in all of my life. So
exactly
spending a little bit of time over here on this one part of me just makes me happier and more present and more available to the world and to the people around me.
Yes.
And I feel that's like what you're talking about with breath work and the work that you do with plant medicine.
And even people, just like
it's
with Grieve and Breathe, I think that working, because I do also work with grief and people, it's really the reason why I work with grief is so that we can have more joy in our life. Because if we actually go into these things and to feel them and to let them move, we're expanding our capacity for joy, for really being able to like be happy and real happiness, right? Where we're not blocking, we're not, so that's with all of these practices is just really how can we really find the things that are going to support us to feel good in our body, to feel good in our spirit, to really feel that peace and connection to ourselves and the people around us and presence and all of that. It's like, that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you brought up Grieve and Breathe too, because in this conversation, I noticed I've wanted the focus to be all on you, but of course, the way that I was introduced to you was through Grieve and Breathe, and you are a part of that with Amber, who's been on the podcast.
Yeah.
So maybe like we can talk just a little bit about like your part of that, which obviously is the breathwork part.
Yeah.
But you've been partnering with Amber with that from the start, right?
Yeah, we've been doing Grieve and Breathe for about 2 years, and then it's opened up other opportunities for grief work with other people. And Grieve and Breathe was, Amber's went through a lot of really big grief in her life. I've also had grief in my life, but like she's just had this different layer of grief. And we just knew we needed to start something. We kept saying it. We need to hold a space for grief. And I was already doing breath work, so she had to download Grieve and Breathe, and we started just coming up with this thing, and it just manifested to be this really beautiful ceremony. And we do a grief ritual of having an altar, having people bring things that represent their grief, and we have a council, which is a sharing circle, basically speaking from our heart. Usually we're speaking and being witnessed in our grief, what we're holding. And we'll then move into a full breathwork session like you experienced today, and usually kind of end in a sound healing. And it's a pretty full journey. And then we've expanded it. We've done retreats. So it's we just did our second retreat, which your wife came to. And that has been amazing, and we've brought in other facilitators that can facilitate other things with grief. So we've brought in, a movement piece where we're doing contact beyond contact down, or it's like a dance movement practice with this woman Karen, who's amazing in Ojai, and
also that part, well, in particular, was like blew her mind.
Yeah,
in the sense that it was fun and it was like beautiful. She didn't expect it to be so impactful and like have so much meaning and emotion at the end of it.
Because it's also you're connecting with other people, and there's a vulnerability in there, and then we had a woman, Inertia, who's a therapist, and she brought in this other really beautiful piece. I mean, she's really kind of explaining our brain on grief, but then she brought in, she was amazing. So she did like this singing, and we sang together, and it was incredible. So it's been amazing. And we went to Costa Rica. We're working with another friend of ours that own a company called Toucan Retreats. And I have done 4 retreats with them, and 3 of them have been grief retreats in Costa Rica, and they're a bit even longer, a 6-7 day retreat where we're doing all kinds of different things. So it's been quite the journey. And a mature human is one that can be stretched large with grief in one hand and joy in the other hand. Or it can be like gratitude in one hand and grief in the other hand. So it's really allowing that like full spectrum of being able to go into those emotions in such a big way. And I think that that's really why I do this work. And I think, many people look at it and it's like, oh, why would you want to do all this? It's like, because it's deep work, to go into those spaces of grief, but there's so much joy there. Yeah. And I feel like it gives people the capacity to have more of that. When they're working through it, when they feel the support, when they do these practices. Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, you've given everyone a practice that they can take at home. We've got like all of your resources of the things that you do. This has been a great time to dive into this topic. I'd love to do it again.
Definitely, I love having conversations with you. It's amazing.
Great.
So
awesome.
Yeah.
You should trust your heart, your heart, your heart, your heart.